everyone, welcome to Steph's Garage Jewelry. I have a fun bezel for you guys. It's just a little, it is gorgeous. So on this particular bezel, here is one and here's the other. And the only difference between the two of these is that you see where I have three 2mm fire polish. I only have one, and I substituted 11 Delicas for that. So that's the only difference between these two. Otherwise, they're the exact same design. So on here, this is a very fun project, and I think you're going to enjoy it. And it's going to be part of the Cassandra series, and it's good. This is looking and shaping into be a really some fun projects. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, little housekeeping note. So today I'm going to be working with a 18x13 Swarovski's fancy oval stone, and that just means that the front is flat. If you have a front that's pointy, that's a Rivoli, and you may have to adjust the design a little bit and the number of beads for you to work for you. So keep that in mind. But I am using the fancy stone and not the Rivoli, so I have a nice flat front. And on this particular project, also just a little reminder with the foil backing, I did add some clear fingernail polish, and it has dried, so I'm ready to roll. Now for our thread, today I'm using 4 pound, just because we are going to be doing some more weaving than usual, and I just wanted that little bit of extra room. You should be fine with 6 pound as well. It's up to you. If you're using the 8 pound, it might get fairly tight in there, and I would worry about breaking beads, but go ahead and give it a shot. Sometimes it just matters of what batch of beads you have and what you're using. If you're using Toho's, as I'm using Miyuki, they tend to be a little smaller than Toho's. Toho's tend to be a little larger. If you are using Toho's, you may have to do a little bit of adjustment. Now with that being said, I have my needle threaded with about 1.5 wingspan. So that's one full, from one arm to the very next arm and halfway through. And then I put my stop bead about halfway through that, okay? We're going to start off with 11 Delicas, and I have 40 of them to get started. Alright, so I have 40 11 Delicas on my thread. I'm going to create a circle, creating a little loop to start off with. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to go through the first 3 11 Delicas that I put on. Just like that. And then I'm just going to do a nice gentle tug. So I tug my thread. There we go. And now we have a nice little loop. And you don't want things too tight. So as I'm working, I'm going to just slowly, continuously kind of loosen up the beads so they're not sitting and bunching up. There we go. Now this is going to be, we're going to start off with a basic peyote stitch. So let me see if I can get a little closer so you're able to follow along. There we go. So I'm coming out of this 11 Delica. I'm going to pick up 11 Delica, which will sit on here, the one that I'm skipping, and then I'm going to go through the next 11 Delica. So just like this. Then I'm going to use my fingers as I gently tug on my thread to help the bead to go in place. Now if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. You just have to readjust it and fix it. So you see how my beads are starting to bunch up? I'm just going to go like this and give them a little extra space, okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and do one more. So I'm coming out of here. I'm going to pick up an 11-0. It's going to sit on top of the bead I'm skipping. And then I'm going to go through the next 11-0 Delica. There we go. Just like that. Now I do the first few like this as I go along. Once I have about 3 or more, I'll start forming. So let's go ahead and do one more together. So let me just kind of unbunch these a little bit so they're not too tight. Alright, so I'm coming out of here, setting a bead on top of here and skipping this 11-0 Delica and going through the next. Just like that. Using my fingers. I'm not pressing hard. I just have them there to guide. There we go. And then I switch this over. Okay? And I have it sitting on my finger this way. And this will help form into the circle that I want it. Okay? So let's do one like this now. So then I just come up here. I'm coming out of here. This 11-0 Delica. I'm going to pick up 11-0 Delica. It's going to sit on top of this bead I'm skipping. And then I'm going to go through the next. Just like this. And then I use my fingers to guide everything through. And just like that. And then before I get started, I'll just kind of reposition, roll my beads a little bit so nothing is like bunching up and creating a little bit of space. And I go all the way around. Once I'm done with that, I want to make sure that I weave through this last 11-0 Delica and then weave through the first 11-0 Delica that I put on for this second round, okay? Meet me back here. We'll get started with our third round, which will be then 15-0 Delicas. Alright, see you soon. Alright, so now we're ready for our third round. We're coming out of this 11-0 Delica. We're picking up a 15-0 Delica. It's going to sit in that notch. And then we're just going to go through the next 11-0 Delica that's sticking out. There we go. Just like that. So let's do that one more time. There we go. Just slide this down. So I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. I'm coming out of this 11-0 Delica. I picked up a 15-0 Delica. I'm going to go through the next 15-0 Delica sticking out. So my 15-0 Delica will sit in that little notch. There we go, just like that. So let's do one more. There we go. Whoops, I think I went out of camera frame, so let me do one more here. There we go. So I'm coming out of 11-0 Delica sticking out. I picked up a 15-0. I'm moving to the next 11-0 Delica sticking out. There. And you do that all the way around. Then make sure that you weave through this 11-0 Delica and this 15-0 Delica, so you're coming out of here. And then we're going to be switching over to our 15-0 rounds. So go all the way around and make sure you're coming out of this 15-0, oops, I'm sorry, coming out of the 15-0 Delica that you first put on, and we'll go ahead and put on the fourth round, which will be our 15-0 rounds. Alright, sorry about that, I got started here without you. So I finished up putting on my 15-0 Delicas. After that, I switched to my 15-0 rounds. And what we're going to do with this round is we're just going to be picking up, it's just like before. I'm going to pick up, I'm going to come out of this 15-0 Delica, pick up a 15-0 Delica, which will sit in the notch, and go through the next 15-0 Delica. So just like we've been doing. This is just a basic peyote stitch that we're still working on. There we go. I'm just gonna gently give a tug, and voila. And then let's do one more. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up a 15-0 Delica, which will sit in this little notch, and then I'm going to go through the next 15-0 Delica that is sticking out, just like that. There you go. That's all there is to it. So go ahead, go all the way around. Make sure that you end up by coming out of the very first, having your thread and needle coming out of the very first 15-0 round seed bead that you put on for this round, okay? Meet me back here, and we're gonna switch to our tail. Go ahead and remove your stop bead and switch to your tail, and we're gonna start working on the back. And then we'll get started working on our little pattern in the center of our beads here. Isn't that nice? Gives it a little bit of a rectangle feel to it. Alright, so go ahead, go all the way around. Make sure you're coming, when you're done, you go through that very first 15-0 round that you started off with. And then remove your stop bead if you have one on. Thread your tail and meet me back here, and we'll get started on the back. Alright, so we are going to do the same thing that we did in the front. The only difference is we are going to be popping our stone in at some point here. So what we're going to do is, like, for example, I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. I'm sorry, not 15-0. 11-0 Delica. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 Delica, which is going to sit in that little notch, and go through the next 11-0 Delica sticking out. And I'm going to go ahead and do that about 3/4 the way around. And then I'm going to stick my stone in and then do the remainder, okay? So go ahead, do 3/4 of it. Meet me back here. We'll stick our stone in and then do the remaining, okay? Alright, so I have about 3/4, maybe a little bit more than 3/4 of my 15-0 Delicas in the back on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just pop my stone in for now. Like this. There we go. There. And then I'm just going to go ahead and finish putting on my Delicas. And I'm just going to hold it down this way to kind of save on my thumb here a little bit. Make sure it's on. There. There we go. And then I'm just going to pick up a 15-0 Delica. I'm coming out of this. Let me get a little closer here. There we go. I'm coming out of this 11-0 Delica. I picked up the 15-0, which will sit in this little notch here. And then I'm going to go through the next 11-0 Delica. So just like that. Whoops, I did that wrong. There we go. So let me back up. There we go. I went through the wrong 11-0 Delica because I wasn't paying attention. There we go. Just like that. So let's go ahead and do one more. So I'm coming out of here. The 15-0 Delica will sit right in this notch, and I'll go through this next 11-0 Delica. There we go. I'm being careful not to scratch the back. There we go. Making sure things sit. And then I'll go all the way around, and then I will make sure that my needle and thread is coming out of that very first 15-0 Delica that I put on for this round. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to my 15-0 round seed beads. So go ahead, do that, meet me back here, and we'll get started on the 15-0 round seed beads. Alright, so things will still be loose on your bezel, and that's okay. And so what we're doing is we're just coming out of the 15-0 Delicas that are sticking out. our 15-0 rounds will sit in the little notch, and then we'll just go through the next 15-0 Delica. And you want to just hold things in place, and things pop out, you know, it happens. Just go ahead and put it back in, and then we'll just keep going. Okay, it will tighten up as we go along. All right, so let's go ahead and do one more. Let's get a little closer. All right, so I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. I'm picking up a 15-0 round. It's going to sit in the little notch, and then I'm going to go through this next 15-0 Delica. There we go. I'm just going to move my thread out of the way so I don't get caught on it as I'm doing this. There we go. And you don't want to pull too tight, but you do want to give it a nice little gentle tug. There we go. So let's go ahead and let's do one more. There we go. Things are a little loose still. Alright, so I'm coming out of this 15-0 Delica. The 15-0 round is going to sit on top of this notch, and I'm going to go through the next 15-0 Delica. Just like that. Move my thread out of the way. Do a gentle tug, and then I'm just going to come over here, make sure things sit correctly. And just trying to make sure, rearrange things so as I go along, it is where it's supposed to be. And then I go all the way around. There we go. And as we go all the way around, what you want to do, it will tighten up. And then when we get to this, once you go all the way around, make sure your needle and thread are coming out of this 15-0. And then we'll go ahead and continue with the 15-0s and begin working on our little pattern here on the back, which will also be done in the front. Now, we didn't do the pattern yet on the front, and there is logical behind it, is that we want to create the right type of tension as we're doing our peyote stitch on this and creating this pattern. So we're just going to be switching back and forth. So we did the center, we did a little bit of the front, we're doing a little bit of the back, and then we're going to go ahead and continue on the back and then move to the front before we do any of the reinforcement. Okay, so that's the logic behind that, is we just want to keep consistent in the tension, and this is one of the ways to do is going back and forth. Okay, so go all the way around with your 15-0 and make sure you're coming out of that 15-0, that first 15-0 that you put on. Meet me back here and we'll get started with our pattern. Alright, so now we're getting ready to go ahead and create our little pattern here in the back, which will be exactly the same thing pattern we create in the front. So what you want to do, and this is loose enough on the back here that you can slide it still, because we haven't done any reinforcement. Once you've done the reinforcement, that will tighten it a little bit. So what you want to do is get to the point where, if you look at, and you can use your needle here to help you, on the back of your fancy stone, you'll see that it has this line going across. Okay, so use your needle to gauge, and what you want to be is you want to be where you have a 15-0 notch. Okay, and your thread is coming out of the 15-0 round seed bead with a notch in front of it. So you should have one notch here, one notch here, and then second notch will be in the very dead center. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pick up a 15-0 round seed bead. We're going to go through the 15-0 round seed bead sticking out, and your 15-0 round seed bead that you're adding will sit in that little notch. We're going to pick up another 15-0 round seed bead. and go through the next 15-0 seed bead round sticking out. There we go. Do a gentle tug. We're going to do one more. And then we're going to skip 2 spaces, 2 notches. Alright, so coming out of this 15-0 round seed bead sticking out. Let me get a little closer. Slide this over. Going through the next 15-0 seed bead sticking out. Just like that. There we go. Do a gentle tug. There we go. Now we're going to skip 2 notches and not put anything there. So we're going to go ahead and just weave our way around. So I'm just going to go through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round, and by doing so I'm also reinforcing those stitches that we did earlier. Do a gentle tug. Go through another 15-0 Delica and a 15-0 round. So we're skipping 2 spots. There we go. And now we are going to do what we did before. We're going to pick up a 15-0 round seed bead, go through the next 15-0 round seed bead sticking out. So I'm coming out of here. I'm going to go through here. Move my thread out of the way. There we go. And then we're going to pick up another 15-0 round. Just like that. Alright, so we put on 3 up here, we've put on 2 so far, we need to put on 1 more over here, and then we're going to skip 2 spaces. So I'm coming out of here, I picked up a 15-0, and I'm going to go through the next 15-0 round seed bead sticking out, just like that. There we go. Make sure things are in where they're supposed to be. Things are a little loose because we haven't reinforced anything. Alright, so now we're ready to go ahead and skip 2. So I'm going to go through the 15-0 Delica that we previously put on earlier. And a 15-0 round. I'm not adding any beads. I'm just weaving my way to the next spot. There we go. Then I'll go through another 15-0 and Delica and a 15-0 round. So I'm skipping 2 notches. Alright, let's make sure. There we go. And it looks like things kind of moved a little bit, so I just need to fix that. Let's see here. And not too bad. There. So just make sure that the way it should be is just like we did on the other side. If you go down the center, you should have a notch. There we go. And then you should have a notch on this side. And then you'll have a notch on this side. So we'll have 2 that we skipped, 1 on the side, and then the center. So let's go ahead. So we're going to be putting on 3, and we want the very center bead that we put on to sit in the center. Alright, so we've skipped our 2 notches. Now we're ready to put on 3 beads. So let's get a little closer. There we go. So I'm coming out of this 15-0. I picked up a 15-0. I'm going to go through the next 15-0 sticking out. just like that. There we go. Set it into place. Pick up another 15-0. Go through the next 15-0 sticking out. This should be the very center one because this is the third. So it looks like we may have to do a little adjustment. And then pick up another 15-0 and go through the next sticking out 15-0. There we go. All right. And let's just make sure things are centered. It looks like it's a little off. So I'm just going to center it a little bit. There we go. There. That looks a lot better. So now we're going to go ahead and skip 2. Just like we did before. I'm just going to move my threads out of the way. Alright. So I'm coming out of here. Whoops. So I'm coming out of here. I'm just going to weave my way through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round seed bead. So I'm not adding anything. I'm just weaving through beads already existing. So I'm going to skip 2 notches here. There we go. Again, I'm going to go through a 15-0 Delica and a 15-0 round seed bead. And at the same time I'm doing this, I'm reinforcing those beads. There we go. Now I'm ready to go ahead and put on my next 3. There we go. So I'm coming out of 15-0 round. I pick up a 15 round and go through the next 15-0 round sticking out. I pick up a 15-0 round, so I'm coming out of this 15-0 round. I'm going to go through the next. I picked up a 15-0 round and I'm going to go through the next 15-0 round here. There we go. Fix that 15-0 round sticking out. There we go. Set that in place. And I got one more to do. There we go. All right. So we just added 3 here. So now we're going to go ahead and go through the 2 notches that we skipped previously and maneuver back to that very first section where we put on a second round of our 15-0 round seed beads. And we're not adding anything, we're just going to maneuver our way. So let's go ahead. And we're just doing that. All right. So what we're going to do is we have 2 spots here. First, let's make sure we're still centered. And if we need to maneuver, let's go ahead and do so. Looks like we're pretty good, just a slight fix. There we go. And what we're going to do is we have 2 little notches over here. So we're going to add 2 more beads. And then we're just going to weave our way through to the next section and do the same thing. Alright? So I need to maneuver for where I put on my first bead. So I go through that very first bead that I put on to start off with. Alright, so now we have this notch and then we have this notch over here. Alright, so this is the very first 15-0 round seed bead that I put on for the second round of the 15-0 round seed beads. So we're going to go ahead, pick up a 15-0 round, go through the notch sticking out, the very center notch. We pick up a 15-0 round seed bead and then go through the notch sticking out. And then we're going to come down the mountain. That's what I'm going to call this. We'll call these little mountains. Alright, so now we just have this little mountain that we need to come through and weave our way until we get to You come through the very top over here. All right, so the second mountain that you have, you want to make sure you go through the very first two 15-0s, and they should be like a little hill incline. Okay, meet me over there and we'll do that section as well. So we're just going to do that together. I'm just going to weave my way over there, not adding any more beads. There we go. And I'm just going through all the 15-0 Delicas and the 15-0 rounds to get to that section. And now I'm at the mountain, and I've gone through the first two 15-0s of the mountain. So I've come to that first notch. So if you look here, we have two notches. We have one right here and one right here. So I'm going to be adding a bead here and a bead here. Just going through the next sticking out 15-0. Move my thread so it doesn't get caught on anything. Set that down. I'm now coming out of here and I'm picking up a 15-0, going through the next sticking out 15-0. And then I just set that down, make sure things lie in place. And I'm going to go ahead and maneuver my way to the next mountain. And it looks like things got a little out of place, so I'm just going to make sure I fix that. There we go. You may have to adjust it again, but I would do one mountain at a time and just make sure you're at the correct spot. Alright, so now we just need to maneuver our way so we get to this spot here. Okay, as you can see, we have two little notches. We're going to go ahead and add those notches there. And there we go. Just make sure things are in the right spot. Again, we'll probably have to fix that later. So I'm just going through the 15-0 Delica and then the 15-0 round. And then the 15-0 Delica. And then I'm going through that 15-0 round. Then I'm making my way up to the mountain so I get to that very first notch. There we go. And I have two notches here. I'm going to go ahead and add my 15-0s, and then I'll check to make sure my bezel is still in the proper place. So I'm coming out of one sticking out 15-0 and going through the next. Making sure things lie down in the right place. Then I'm going through one 15-0 sticking out to the next. Go. And let me just make sure my bezel didn't move out of place. There we go. This should be my center right here where the current notch is. So I'm just going to make sure that lies correctly. There we go. Now I'm ready to maneuver to the next mountain. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just weave our way. So I'm going through a 15-0 Delica and a 15-0 round. I'm trying not to skip any beads. I'm not adding anything yet. And then I go through another 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round. And I'm just going to go ahead and maneuver my way to that 15-0 round, which is sticking out, because I have those 2 notches where I'm going to be adding beads here. So I'm just going to maneuver my way all the way there. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead, add my 15-0, because I'm coming out of the 15-0 that's sticking out, so I'm going through the next 15-0 sticking out. Second one. There we go. Making sure my beads sit correctly. There we go. Then I'm going to pick up another 15-0 and go through the next notch. And I want to make sure things sit correctly. And I think I did something. Oh, yep, I see what I did. There we go. There. My thread got caught on itself. There we go. Then I'm going to go ahead and weave my way through. So I'm skipping 2 of these same notches that we skipped each time. And then I'm going to maneuver myself to the next mountain. And there's a single notch at the very top of that mountain. And so I'm going to maneuver till I get to that point, okay? And I'm not going to add any beads while I do that. So I'll go through starting with the 15-0 Delicas. And then the 15-0 rounds. Things might be getting tight. If you need to, go ahead and switch to a size 13 needle. Give yourself a little room. So far I'm doing okay. Alright, back to the first mountain. There we go. There. Alright, so I'm going to make my way to that little notch that we have, and it looks like I got out of alignment. So I'm just going to fix that. Alright, so we're back in the center here. There we go. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, and now we're going to do things a little different with the last 15-0 that we're going to be putting on top of these mountains. So I'm coming out of this sticking out 15-0. I'm actually going to go through the 15-0 that the bead that I'm putting on will sit on top of. So I'm just going to do this. And what I'm going to, whoops, is that correct? Something isn't correct here. Oops, I'm not in the right spot yet. That's why. I need to still get to the section that's sticking out. There we go. Now we're ready to add on our 15-0. So I'm coming out of the 15-0 that's sticking out. I'm going to go through the 15-0 that my bead that I'm adding will sit on top of. Okay. Then I'm going to go through the 15-0 that I just added. And by doing that, I'm creating a little hug. There we go. And then I'm just going to weave my way down the mountain. Just like this. There we go. Let's back up a little bit. Alright. And then I'm just going to make my way to the next mountain and do the same thing. Alright, so as I just weave my way around, there we go. I'm just going to make myself to the weave myself to the very top of the next mountain. There we go. And don't try to do too many beads at a time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just doing one or a couple at a time. As I say that, I gotta be careful myself. There we go. Oops. Ah. There we go. Alright, so now we can go ahead and add, so I'm coming out of the top of the mountain where the bead is sticking out, and I have this little notch. So I'm going to pick up this, so I'm coming out of this 15-0, I'm going to pick up a 15-0, but instead of going through the next 15-0, I'm going to go to the bead that the 15-0 is going to sit on top of, and go through there. There we go. Then I'm going to go through the bead that I just put on, and go through the next 15-0 seed bead like I normally would have. And what that does is that it just creates a reinforcement at the top of the bead, the final bead that we're putting on, and it creates a little hug. So it just reinforces everything. So now I'm just going to maneuver my way down the mountain. There we go. There. And I'm just going to continue to weave till I get to the next mountain. To the top of that where there's little notches, okay? And I'm not going to add any more beads until I get to that little top where the notch is. There we go. And I'm just going through a couple of beads at a time, making sure I don't skip anything or have any threads sticking out. Now I'm at the top of the mountain. There we go. And before I do this, I just want to make sure things are sitting correctly. It looks like they... Alright, so I'm coming out of here, and instead of going through that to the very next notch, I'm going to come down to the bead that the bead I'm putting on will sit on top of. So I picked up a 15-0. I'm going to go through the bead it's sitting on top of. There we go. There. There we go. Making sure. There we go. And then I'm going to go back to the bead I just put on. And then down the mountain. There we go. And then I'm going to continue to weave. And then I'm just going to continue to weave until I get to that last and final mountain. There we go. Oops, I don't want to skip any beads. So I'm not adding anything. I just have one bead to add, and that will be at the top of the mountain. There we go. There we go. Now I'll be coming out of the notch, the first bead sticking out, where the notch is created. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, go through, just like we did with the others, the bead that it's going to sit on top of, just like that. There we go. Make sure it's lined correctly. There we go. And then I'll go through that bead that I just added, and then go through this section where I would have normally have gone through. And then I'm just going to weave until I get to the very beginning of our first mountain. I won't need to add any more beads to the back here. I just want to make sure I've reinforced everything. Actually, I don't need to go further than this, but let's just go through one more here. Just go through the 15-0 Delica one more time. That's actually good enough because we've reinforced this several times already. Alright, so now we're just going to check the back. As you can see, it got moved a little bit, so we just need to readjust it. And at this point, I just kind of like to use this side a little bit. There. And you see this line going across. I'm using that to match up with the peak over here. So that way I know things are aligned. There we go. There we go. And things will straighten out even more as we do our reinforcement. So now we're ready to go ahead and do the front. So go ahead and thread your needle on the thread on the front, and we'll get started with our design in the front, just like over here and here. So as we're doing our design on the front, we want to be conscientious is that it mirrors the back in the right places. So here you can see where we initially skipped the back. We did that over here. And then you have your mountain on this side and your mountain on this side. So we just want to make sure that when we do the front, that is also consistent with what it looks like in the back. On this particular design. So that's, I mean, it's not hard. It's just a matter of being conscientious of what we're doing. So where you want to do is you want to make sure that we're starting the same spot that we started for the back. Okay. So over here on the back, if you can look, I have my first two skip spaces here. And then I have my very first where I began the mountain over here, the center of the mountain, and then the other side of the mountain. So you want to be in the same spot where we began that mountain. So if I come over here, that's here. So I want to make sure my thread is coming out of this 15-0 that's sticking out. Because if I look at this, I should have the one side of the mountain, the center of the mountain, and the other side of the mountain, okay? And that will mirror with what's on the opposite side over here, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So, you know, we did this, so this round, what we're going to do is we're going to add 3, skip 2, add 3, skip 2, add 3, skip 2, until we have a total of 4 mountains, the start of 4 mountains. Okay, so we're picking up 15-0 seed bead. I'm coming from this 15-0 seed bead sticking out, and I'm going through the next 15-0 seed bead sticking out. And things should be already a little bit tighter. They're, you know, they'll still be a little loose, but it should be a little tighter now. We just haven't done any of our reinforcement for the center of the spine, and that really helps tightens things up. There we go. Alright, so I put on my first 2 beads. So now I just need to put on my third. Make sure I'm being consistent. Alright, now I go ahead and skip 2 spaces, 2 notches. So I'm just weaving through without adding any beads. And these two little notches will be skipping all the way around, just like we did with the back. Now I'm coming out of here. I'm going to go ahead and add I'm going to add one bead at a time. But I'll have 3 spaces I'll be adding one single bead to. Alright, so I added one. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the second. And I'm just going through the sticking out beads one at a time. So that's the second. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the third one. Just like that. Alright, now we're going to skip 2 spots. Notches, and then start putting on our third mountain. Alright, so now we've started the second mountain. Now we need to go and maneuver ourselves to the place where we're going to start the third mountain. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to weave through. I'm not adding any beads yet. So I'm going to skip 2 notches here. Here's the first one. So I'm going through the 15 Delica and the 15 round. Then I'm going to go through the second 15 Delica and the second 15 round, and I'll be in the spot to begin my third mountain. There we go. So you can see here we have let's see here, we got 1, 2, 3 notches where we're going to be adding a bead, okay? And all we're going to do is pick up a bead and go through the next sticking out. So I'm coming out of here right now. I picked up a 15 round. I'm going to go through the next 15 round sticking out. Alright, then I'm going to pick up another 15 round, go through this next sticking out 15. There we go. Whoops. Get my thread out of the way so it doesn't get caught and create a knot. My tail was going through. There we go. There we go. So I'm coming out of here. I'm going to go through here. Just like that. Alright, so we got our third mountain on. So now we need to maneuver to our location where our fourth mountain is going to start. So we are going to skip 2 spots, 2 notches. So I'm just going to go through the 15 Delica and then go through the 15 round. So that's 1 notch we skipped. And the notches that we skipped going around, we'll skip each time we go around. So those same places where we skip, we'll just continue to skip. And then we'll go through a 15 Delica and then a 15 round, and that will be the second notch that we skipped. Alright, and for this mountain we're going to go ahead to get started with it. We're going to put on, we have 3 notches that we're going to be adding 15 round seed beads. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up a 15 I'm going to go through the next 15 just like that. Ta-da! Then I'm going to pick up another 15 so I'm coming out of here And I'm going to go through the next 15-0 that's sticking out. And then I'm coming out of here. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, go through the next sticking out 15-0. Alright, so now we have the beginnings of each of our 4 mountains. We can go ahead and add to our mountain. So we're going to put on the next layer of our mountains. So I'm just going to have to skip those initial 2 notches and make my way to the very first mountain. Oops. There we go, just like that. There we go. Now, when I would have skipped the previous, I went through a Delica and 1 15-0, so just like that. So in this section of the mountain, if we look, we have 2 little notches that we need to fill. So I'm just going to maneuver my way to the first 15-0 that's sticking out. There we go. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, so I'll send that first notch and go through the next 15-0 sticking out. So I'm coming out of here, and I have this notch here, and then I have another 15-0 sticking out. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0 to sit in the notch, and then I'm going to go through the next 15-0 sticking out. Alright, so now I just got to maneuver my way down the mountain. And then I just need to maneuver my way to the second mountain. And just like the first one, I want to be right here because we have those 2 notches we want to fill. So I want to be right here. And I maneuver before I add any beads. So I'm just going to go through this 15-0 Delica and this 15-0 round. There we go. Then I'm going to go through this 15-0 Delica and this 15-0 round. And I'm going to go ahead and go through this sticking out 15-0 where the first notch is at, since I was able to do so. Otherwise, just do 1 or 2 beads at a time. It's not a competition on how fast. So at the second mountain, just like our first, we have 2 notches. Here's 1, and then here's 2. So I'm going to go ahead, come out of here, pick up a 15-0, and go through the next sticking out 15-0, just like that. There we go. Then I'm coming out of here, and I have this notch, and I'm going to go through here. So when I'm going to pick up a 15-0 that's going to sit in that notch, and I'm just going to make my way down the mountain. And then I'm going to make my way to the third mountain. So I'm just going to go through this 15-0 Delica and this 15-0 round. Just like that. Then I'm going to go through this 15-0 and then the next 15-0, and I'm just going to go ahead and make my way to the top of the mountain for the third mountain. Just like our other mountains, I have 2 notches here that I need to fill. So I am coming out of the first sticking out bead. I'm going to go ahead and pick up another 15-0 round, go through the next sticking out 15-0. Whoops. My thread got caught. And then I'm going to pick up another 15-0 and go through the next sticking out 15-0. So it sits in the second notch. There we go. Then I'm going to make my way down the mountain, just like this. There we go. Then I'm going to go through my way to weave my way to the fourth mountain. So I'm going through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round, just like this. Alright, and then I'm going to do another, go through the 15-0 Delica and the 15-0 round, and then I'm just going to make my way to the top of that fourth mountain. There we go. Head, come out of here, pick up a 15-0 and go through the next sticking out 15-0, just like that. There we go. Then I'm coming out of here and I have this notch. I'm going to go through here. So when I'm going to pick up a 15-0 that's going to sit in that notch, and then I'm going to go through the next. I'm just going to make my way down the mountain. And then I'm going to now, if things are getting too tight with your needle, go ahead and switch to a size 13 needle. Otherwise, if it's working fine for you, you can go ahead and just stay as is. So I'm just going to maneuver my way to the top of this mountain here. We're just making our way. I'm not adding any beads yet. I'm just weaving through all the 15-0s. Alright, so now we have this very single notch where we have to add a bead. So we're going to do things a little different. There we go. So I'm coming out right here. So I'm going to add the 15-0, my final 15-0 for this mountain. I'm then going to weave through the bead that it's going to sit on down here, and then back through the bead that I just added, and then going through the other sticking out bead here. So here we go. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up a 15-0, which will sit in this notch, and I'm going to weave through the bead it's going to sit on top of. Okay, so I'm coming out of the bead that it's sitting on top of. There we go. Then I'm going to weave through the bead I just added. Okay, creates a little hug. And then I'm going to go to weave through the bead that was originally sticking out before adding that last bead. And that just allows you to reinforce, so we don't have to try to weave all the way around another time. Now we're just going to weave our way down the mountain and maneuver ourselves to the second mountain. And we're not going to add a bead until we get to the second mountain. We're just going to add one. So go ahead, weave through all the 15-ohs if you can. If you have to, go through some of the 11-ohs. Or switch to a smaller needle. Alright, so now I'm at the top of the second mountain. Alright. There we go. And we have a notch right here. And we're going to be adding a bead there. So we're going to pick up a 15-oh. I'm going to weave through the bead that's going to sit on top of. There we go. I'm going to go back through the bead that I just added. Okay. And then I'm going to go through the next bead that it would have sat, I would have normally gone through if I wasn't reinforcing at the same time. There we go. And then I'm just going to weave my way down the mountain. And make my way to the next mountain. Make sure things sit correctly. There we go. And then we're just going to weave our way back through to the third mountain. There we go. And just like the other mountains, I have this little notch. I'm coming out of here. I'm going to add a bead. I'm going to go through the bead it's going to sit on top of. And then I'm going to weave back through the bead I just added. And then go to the opposite side. And weave my way down the mountain. Like that. There we go. Alright, now I'm just going to maneuver my way to the fourth mountain so we can add our final bead to this part of, and then we can do our next set of embellishments. There we go. So here we go. So I'm coming out of here. I picked up a 15-oh, which will sit in this notch, and I'm going to weave through the bead it's going to sit on top of. Okay, so I'm coming out of the bead that it's sitting on top of. There we go. Then I'm going to weave through the bead I just added. Okay, creates a little hug. And then I'm going to go to weave through the bead that was originally sticking out before adding that last bead. We've already basically reinforced the front and back, So all we need to do before we add our embellishment is reinforce the spine. So let's go ahead and let's do that. And what you want to do is, if you have enough, depending on how much thread you have. So if you look at your tail, if your tail isn't as long as your front, use the shortest tail, is what I'm saying. So, or use the shortest side of the thread. So if your front is shorter than your tail, have that on the needle. And if your tail is shorter than your front thread, thread that that side of the thread, okay? And then meet me back here and we'll reinforce the center. So what we're just going to do is we're just going to reinforce the spine. And in this particular case, I am going to use the front thread for the embellishment. And so I'm just going to weave all the way around with my tail. And I'll use the front thread for the embellishment, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm coming, so you have the 11 Delicas section. So you got, some of them are side by side, and then you got the single one. And then you got more there side by side, okay? These darker beads here are the 15 Delicas, all right? So we're just interested right now in the 11 Delicas, which are a little larger. So I'm coming out of this one here, right here. I'm coming out, all right? And I'm just gonna go up like this, whoops, on the opposite side, on the opposite bead, and then back down that 11 Delica, okay? And that creates a little hug. And then after that, I'm just going to go down through the single 11 Delica, which doesn't have any of the 11 Delicas side by side. It's just by itself. It's surrounded by 15 O's. So I'll just go through that and maneuver to the next set of 11 Delicas side by side. So I'll go through here, and then go through here, and reinforce. And then back through the one I just came out of. All while making sure I don't have my thread catching on anything. Alright, so let's do that again. So I'm going through the single one to maneuver to the section where I have side-by-side Delicas. So I'll go through one, and then through the other in the opposite direction, and then back through the 11 Delica. Let's do one more because I may have gone out of camera frame. Go through the single. And then select the ones where there's two side by side. There we go. And then go through, once you've come out of the one side, go through the opposite side in the opposite direction. Okay? And repeat. Let me do that because I think I kept going out of frame here. This should be better. There we go. Go down the single one. Like that. There we go. Maneuver till I got the two side by side. So we're just creating a little hug here. So I'm going through the one. So I came through this one, came out of this one. I'll go through the other one in the opposite direction. And then I will go through, back through the one that I initially came out of. Okay, so go ahead and do that all the way around. Okay, and use your other thread to judge if when you've made a complete revolution once you've gone all the way around. And then meet me back here and we'll get started on our embellishment, okay? And don't yet cut off your tail because you're going to use your tail to determine once you've gone all the way through, okay? Alright, and since I was using my tail because it's the shorter thread, once I was done reinforcing all the way around, I just maneuvered myself to one of the 15-0s in the back just so it doesn't get in the way. And we're not going to end our tail just yet, and instead we're going to just switch over to our other thread right now to get started on. Alright, so now what we're going to do to start off our embellishment is we're going to do a stitch and a ditch. So what you want to do is you want to maneuver your longest thread, and for me that's my front thread, and right now I'm coming out of this 11/0 Delica, okay, and this is a very center 11/0 Delica because right up here is two 11/0 Delicas side by side and then another 11/0 Delica right here. So what we're going to do is we are going to pick up a 11/0 Delica, and we're just going to, so if you look here, we got the very center 11/0 Delica. I picked up 11/0 Delica, which will sit right in the center of these two 11/0 Delicas, and I'm going to go to the very next single 11/0 Delica. So let's see here. There we go. So coming out of one 11/0 Delica in the center and moving to the next as I pick up 11/0 Delica, which will sit in the center of the two where we have two 11/0 Delicas side by side. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that one more time. There we go. So I'm coming out of here, right here, and I'm picking up an 11/0 Delica, and I go through the next 11/0 Delicas, which is by itself, so it's right next to two 15/0 bronze, metallic bronze Delicas, and I'm just going to gently tug, and if things don't sit in place, just kind of tug back up and then re-tug, and then until things sit in place. Alright, so let's go ahead and do one more. So I'm coming out of here, and I'm going to go through, here's the two that sit side by side, which the 11/0 Delica that I picked up will sit on in the center of, and then I'll go through the following 11/0 Delica here. There we go. So go ahead, go all the way around, and then go around one more time to reinforce everything. And one way to judge if you've gone all the way around is use your tail. Okay, so here I know for me to have gone all the way around, I would have had to a second time, because my first bead is right here. I would have had to at least bend no more than 3 beads behind where the tail is, and that's a good way to kind of judge to make sure you've gone all the way around. Okay, so go ahead, go all the way around, and then go ahead and do a reinforcement. Meet me back here, and we'll do the next stage of the embellishment. Alright, so if we were to take a look at these bezels before we put on our last bit, if we look at this, we'll see that on the side where it's long, we have 1 2mm fire polish on each side. And that lines up, by the way, with the peak of that mountain, okay? Then on the shorter ends of the oval, we have 3 fire polish. And the very center one also lines up with that peak. And then we have a fire polish on each side of that center one. Alright, so that's just what we need to keep in mind and when we put on our fire polish. So when we take a look at this, right now thread is coming out of this stitch in the ditch. Alright, so my thread's coming out of here. So if I were to look at the very center, that would be this spot here. So I have one space before I need to put on a fire polish. Alright, so I'm going to pick up a 11 Delica, go through my stitch in the ditch, my next stitch in the ditch, then it'll be fire polish, 2mm fire polish, go through the next stitch in the ditch, make sure things sit correctly, and then if I were to look at this, there we go, and let's see here, did things get a little out of whack? They did. So let me see if I can put things back in order. There we go. There, that looks better. Alright, so if I were to look at this, the next fire polish, so here's the center, will be right here. So I have 3 spaces before I need to put on a fire polish. So let's go ahead and put on our next 11 Delica. Oops, my thread got caught. There we go. And then our next 11 Delica. Just picking up a 11 Delica and going through the stitch in the ditch. And then one more. Let me get my tail here out of the way. There we go. So I picked up a 11 Delica. I'm going to go through the next stitch in the ditch. Confirm that the center is right here. So I got fire polish, fire polish, fire polish. Alright, now let's turn this around. Our next fire polish would be right here. So we have 1, 2, 3 spaces before we need a fire polish. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're just adding 11 Delicas in between each of the stitch in the ditches that we aren't adding the fire polish. And making sure our thread doesn't get caught on anything along the way. There we go. Alright, so now we add 1 fire polish here, because this is the center. If things don't sit correctly, just go ahead and tug out and then retug. Alright, so here's our next center. Okay, so we have a fire polish here, a fire polish here, and a fire polish here. So fire polish, fire polish, fire polish. And then we have 1, 2, 3 11 Delicas we're going to be adding. So let's go ahead and do our first one. our second one, and our third one. Alright, so now we need to go ahead, add our last 3 fire polish, and then the rest will be 11 Delicas, because we would have added all of our fire polish on here. Total of 8. 3 on 2 sides and 1 on 1 side. There we go. There we go. And then our final couple 11 Delicas. There we go. Alright, so just remember, before ending any thread, you want to either weave in and out several times and change direction, or you want to do a couple of half knots. And what I suggest doing is, like with my tail, I've already weaved in and out several times when I reinforced the entire circumference of the oval on the center of the spine, so I can go ahead and end that thread now. And then what I'm going to do with my front thread is I'm going to go ahead and go around one more time, and then I'm going to do 3 to 4 half knots within this embellishment, and then I'll go ahead and end the thread. So here we go. We got our little projects done. Nice job, everyone. I look forward to seeing pictures. Right now with this series, I'm asking people to also, if they would like to share why they got into beading. I would love to hear your story of beading and why you got into it, what inspired you, who inspired you. I'm getting some feedback already, and I appreciate it, and it's really educational. It's, you always can learn something new. So take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.